What's up, everybody? Hold on, let me make sure I got my controls right and everything. Got my water. All right. No kitty. Because my cat is always super interested right when I'm starting to do something. It's the nature of animals and the nature of children. Right when you're about to do something important, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? Hi, can I bother you?" It's fine. How's everybody doing? So I mostly today, I say this isn't going to be a long video. Who knows? But the main thing I want to, today was a little rough for me. I wouldn't say rough. It's, first of all, like my brain is just, after a long day when you're just trying to get your thoughts together, it feels like, what's that meme where you got like 50 tabs on your computer open and you don't know which one the music is coming from. It's very much like that today. But the premise of this video is coming from my life, my actual life. I mean, everything is, but so I've been thinking a lot myself over the course of this year, maybe specifically over the last month or so, like not just from the beginning of March, but like the last month's time. I've been really focused on, myself and my therapy journey and what all of this means to me. And what I mean by that is, why am I on this journey? Why am I on this path? And I can give answers to what I know. There's always that element of the unknown that I'm not quite, that, like there's very much this feeling of like, I'm on this path for a greater reason that hasn't fully been revealed to me yet. But there are reasons that I'm very much aware of why I am on this journey. And what this journey is to me is, I'd say a self-awareness journey, but it's deeper than that. If you're familiar with the psychologist Carl Jung, however you want to say his name, he had a term. I think he's the one who coined the term individuation, becoming individuated, a fully individuated individual. And for those that don't know, I will look up the definition real quick. Hold on, okay. Becoming individuated, because when I came across this term, I was like, that is it. That is it. But I don't think I was really aware of it beforehand. Okay, in analytical psychology, individuation is a therapeutic goal that involves integrating unconscious elements of the psyche into a unified personality. Individuation is the process of becoming a distinct person, which involves psychological, physiological, and social processes. It's a lifelong process that involves making choices that make you unique. It involves incorporating more of the unconscious, resolving conflicts, such as between introverted and extroverted tendencies, recognizing your innermost uniqueness, becoming a psychological individual, a separate, indivisible unity or whole. So yeah, I mean, that's the Google definition, Webster's definition, if you will. What that means for me is I have been trying, and I don't, this hasn't been a lifelong thing. I cannot claim that. I can't say that I have been trying to be this person my whole life, because God knows I have not. But recently for me could be like anything from like a week ago to months ago. But over the course of the last year of my life, I have been really striving to know myself. There's that famous quote, know thyself. I've been really striving to know myself. And what that means is like literally knowing myself, not just, oh, I like this food, or I like this genre of movies or this type of book. No, it goes much deeper than that. Knowing, well, why do I have this habit? Why do I have this mannerism? Why do I feel this way when I'm in this situation, and this way when I'm in this situation? Um, Triggers. I feel like society is familiar with that term at this point. So triggers. When something upsets us internally, um, asking myself why that is the case, exploring that. So it's not just, the analytical process of it. It's, diving into those depths of like, why am I this way? Free of, well, I was going to say free of shame and guilt, but truthfully, it's a difficult process. There's many things that come up along this journey that we're not proud of, that we are, I won't say ashamed all the time, but it's just like, it's a little cringe. Like, like you find out something about yourself, that a mannerism, a habit, is a pattern, whatever, and it's like, whew, well, I wouldn't want to broadcast that to the world. You know, it's just a feeling of like, I don't like that. And I feel like that's a good thing, because if it's cringe to you, there that's your, I believe that's your soul. That's it. That your soul recognizing that this doesn't align with who I really want to be. And so I have been, it's been a full-time job, a 24/7 pretty much process. And I'm not saying this should be everyone's process, because it is exhausting and it's tiring and it can be isolating. It is isolating. You will feel crazy at times. I say all that to say that it's, I believe the purpose of it and the benefits of it far outweigh the uncomfortable aspects along the way. And I say that now, like, like when I'm going through something difficult, it's like, why am I doing this? But like in hindsight, you can see, how working through something that, like something difficult within ourselves, how that benefits us on the other side when we have, I won't say fully healed, because I'm not sure there is ever a process of being fully healed, but when we've gotten to the point where it's, we're not ignorant to it anymore. We're not ignorant. We've processed it. We've encountered multiple situations where this has occurred. We've come to many conclusions. We've found healing. We've cried it out a few times. Like we're not dumb to this thing anymore. Like I said, I won't say fully healed, because what the fuck does that even mean? I feel like, well, like I said in a previous video, with everything being a spiral, we're going to come back and revisit things. So that's why I don't believe that we're ever fully healed. I just feel like we get to a point where the grunt work is a little out of the way, or the more difficult aspects of it are in the past. I guess that's a good way to say it. Anyway, but I have been striving to do this for a while now. I could safely say about a year. And listen, first of all, I want to say that that I am aware of, there is no set template for this. So it's not like having the 10 commandments, or having, something where it's like, if you can only do this, or like, if you don't do this, then you're a good person. If you don't do this, then you're a good person. If you do this, you're a bad person. Life is not like that. We've all, I hope, as adults, that we've recognized that, like, good and bad is very subjective. What's good to one person may not be good to another person, and what's bad to one person may not be bad to another person. Like, it varies. You might have a large group of people thinking that this thing is good and this thing is bad, and therefore people, well, yeah, that's good, that's bad. But outside of that group of people, if it's not considered that way, what does that mean? So it's very subjective. It tends to be linked to, like, it can be within a certain part of society, or a certain part of a demographic group. But outside of that, it may not have the same, you may not view it in the same way. So I am not here to say that, like, hey, doing this is good and doing that is bad. What I will say is that working to become individuated, working to know yourself, and to heal and grow in just that entire process. And I'm not talking about like surface level shit, like, oh, I used to smoke cigarettes and now I don't, so I've worked on myself. I mean, much deeper than that. Like it's ugly crying. It's like I said, it's being isolated for extended periods of time. It's having everybody misunderstand you. It's feeling like the outcast because, well, people are misunderstanding you. They think, your actions suggest this, that, and the next because they're making assumptions, whatever. When really that's not what your actions and intentions are at all. And it's specifically being put in these processes. So I believe for a reason. Um, Now I feel like that's going to be different from person to person depending on what your sole purpose is. Well, if you're on here, if you're here for a specific path and a specific purpose or whatever, and you figure that out, great. I myself, I have definitely begun exploring and finding answers to my specific. I won't say my specific purpose because that's still multifaceted as most people's is. I would assume. Um, but just when you think about what am I here for, if you ask yourself that question, I have started to figure what that is for me. And it's heavy, and it's not anything like I don't say heavy to suggest it's negative or anything like that, but it's heavy because of what is required, what you have to go through to, sorry guys. So I was saying like the process is difficult. It's like I mentioned just a minute ago, it's being isolated, and some of that is by choice and some of it is not. It's having family and colleagues and people I know not understand my actions and my words, and having to be okay with that because I am working towards something. I am being, what's the word I can use? It's like knowing, I am starting to realize what I am here for, and knowing what that is means far more to me than the opinions of others. But it feels horrible sometimes. I'm not going to say it's easy. I think a lot of people will parade around and say, "Oh, I don't care what other people think," and some people may not. There are probably definitely people that really don't care what others think. But I would comfortably bet money and say that there are many of people who say that and have no idea what that means. I was one of them. I very much prided, whatever the word is. I was proud of the fact that I felt like I did not care what others think, and that I was this individual, and I was, like just doing things my own way, just completely unaffected by others. Well, as I, set off on this journey, I realized that was very much not the case. In certain areas, yes, as we find in life, in certain areas we might be doing things exactly how we thought we were, but what we will find in many other areas is that we thought we were doing something a certain way, and it turns out that that wasn't the reason, that wasn't the motive, that wasn't why at all. And it's not until you start to um, really work on yourself, get into therapy, whatever you're doing to heal and grow, the shadow work, um, it's not until you start doing that that you start to discover all those other layers of like the whys. And like I said, this is not an easy thing. I have very much realized over the course of this year why people just want to go through life. They want to have their material comforts, their girlfriend or their boyfriend. They want to have, a nice place to stay, a nice car to drive. They would, of course, the basic needs, food, clothing, shelter, whatever. Have a good friend group, have some hobbies, and just live life and grow old. I very much understand why that is just a blueprint that some people, that's all they want to live. I get it. And I feel like for a lot of people, that is what they signed up to do in this lifetime. They came here to just live, to live life. And, like, I'm sure it's deeper than that, but it's like not everyone is on a journey of this deep exploration of self, where it's like, let me deconstruct myself down to the bone and the marrow and the frame and just the pit of nothingness, and then build myself back up. essentially that is the journey that I've been on. And I've been on this in this process of asking myself why am I doing this? And the reason I'm sharing this is because I know that there are other people out there like this. It's probably my tribe that I have not met. um, but it's a path of self-discipline. It's a path of putting the ego aside. It's a path of not saying a lot of things you want to say and saying a lot of things you don't want to say. Speaking your truth, essentially. So, like, working on like saying the things, speaking up for yourself, setting boundaries, all of that, saying things when you need to, and then in other areas where perhaps we've said too much or we've just been a little careless with how we've responded and reacted, toning those areas down and learning when not to speak, learning when silence is just chef's kiss, as opposed to, oh, I got something to say about this. It is truly a lifelong journey, and I have taken it upon myself to, like, sort of document, in a sense, um, the initial stages of this. And I say initial because in the scope of what my human brain can think of. And like I said, I'm just, going with what my human mind can think of. I feel like I'm still in the beginning stages of whatever this is. Um, it's hard. Um, and like I said, like, I get that. I wanted to specifically emphasize that I realize that this is not the path that everyone is going to take, and that's okay. And I understand that. And hey, that's fine. You live your life. Like, if you're very much here to just live and not really self-reflect and not really gain a lot of self-awareness and not really work on yourself and heal and grow, cool. Just do that away from me. There's really no hard feelings. It's just not something that I feel I would thrive and associate with. And that's okay. Um, we tend to hang around those and gravitate towards those who are in similar journeys and paths as ourselves. And that's what I am. I'm okay with that. I've accepted that, and I'm still looking for my tribe. But I just wanted to be real about like what I'm trying to do here. Like I said, I've been prompted by my spiritual guides to share my story, and what I've realized recently is that my story it includes far more than the things that I've been through. It includes many of the things I am currently going through. It means being transparent and vulnerable and open about that, and not shying from that. Um, it took me a while to even release audio recordings of the thoughts and downloads I was having, and then to gravitate to video recordings is a whole nother arena that I hope to be fully comfortable with by the end of this year. But I'm still in the beginning stages of adjusting to that level of comfort. But I know it's necessary. I've been told it's necessary. I've been told that this is what I'm supposed to do, that this is going to help me and help others, and having faith and trust that that is the case, regardless of how many people are viewing it or what people are saying about it, or what this person thinks about it, or what this person thinks about it. I can't really concern myself with any of that, and that's difficult for me because I'm human. I feel like I said earlier about like people being honest. Like, I think most people, if they're being honest with themselves, they would admit to like wanting to be liked. And if you don't want to be liked, like, that's a little odd to me. Like, it's not a bad thing. I think society maybe has given it a negative connotation, like, oh, if you just want to be liked by everybody, like, you'll and like, I understand what they mean. Like, if you're trying to be liked by everybody, you're not really being authentic to yourself, because you can't fit everybody's template. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And if you are, how? How? Because there's so many different types of people. We're not meant to be liked by everyone. This has been something that I've learned throughout the course of my life, and as I've aged, mostly, I feel like I credit my maturity to this understanding. Like, I am almost 40, you guys. Believe it or not. Like, I know people have a hard time believing that, but I have no reason to lie about that. Um, but like, it has only been in the latter half of my 30s that I have begun to have these deep and profound revelations of like, Okay, am I living authentically to me? And what does that really mean? It's not just like, oh, I dress however I want or I have my own style, so I'm authentic. No, it's deeper than that. It's how am I responding to my own internal cues? So if someone says something that goes against my values or doesn't mesh with my values, am I going to stand up for myself? Or am I going to, well, I want to be liked by this person, so I'm going to agree with them, or I'm just not going to say anything because I just don't want to out myself in that sense. And I'm just going to stay quiet and, just, yeah, I feel like that's being inauthentic when we are um, harboring and what's the word, just muting those parts of ourselves that really want to come out. Sorry guys, my animals just, they start making too much noise, and I know it's gonna be hard to hear, so I had to just settle things down. Um, anyway, but it just, like I said, it's been in like the latter half of my 30s that I have been becoming more aware of all the places where I thought I was being authentic and I really wasn't. And there will be more to come. There always is. Um, I would have thought, about a year or two ago that I had like, oh, well, have figured out everything surprising about myself that there is to figure out. I was sadly mistaken, like sadly mistaken. With age and as we grow and mature and hit these like numbers as far as milestones, so like 30, 35, 40, comes a whole new, what I feel like people don't talk about enough is the gift of understanding. Well, I won't say this is for everybody either, because some people don't get this awareness, or maybe they don't act like they do, but we get like these little packages of like downloads as we get older, and it's like you just understand things differently. That's why it's like I'm probably not going to hang out with like a lot of 20-year-olds because they haven't gone through certain things, most of them. I'm not speaking for everyone, but um I'd say if I'm generalizing it, most 20-year-olds, they still have far more to learn before I feel like I'm going to be super compatible in conversation, in my interests, and all those things. As you get older, your priorities and all of that changes. And, we tend to look at people older than us like, oh, they're boring, or they don't have no fun, or what. Sometimes we do this. What I've realized is like the reality of it is the wealth of knowledge we're gaining, the perspective, the peace of mind is far more valuable than anything material, than how many friends you have, than the amount of money you have. It pales in comparison to the peace of mind and the wisdom and insight that you gain through these experiences and through really breaking down these experiences and understanding them. And I love it. I do. I love getting older, honestly, for that reason alone, is that I was somewhat of a late bloomer in a lot of dynamics, as far as like I was very much a people pleaser, and I still am, being worked on in that sense. But there's just a lot of things that I didn't. I was either surviving, I was in active addiction, I I was trying to figure, I was doing something else besides this process of learning about myself. And it's only been since I've really started exploring that all these little gems have appeared. And I've been asking myself recently, like, oh, what is the purpose of this? Like, why is this exciting to me? Why am I thrilled by this? Because if you ask anybody who's begun this spiritual journey with intention, they will often tell you, you'll often read that like it's hard. You have dark nights of the soul, as they call it, all the shadow work and the shit that you have to go through and uncover, and it's a constant process. And you lose friends and relationships and people you used to talk to, and things that you used to do are no longer fulfilling. And like there's not a lot of good press on the spiritual journey that I have found. Like it's out there, but it's not emphasized as enough as the negative aspects. And I put that in quotes because another part of this spiritual journey is realizing that negative and positive, good and bad, duality essentially dissolves. It begins to dissolve. And I'm not saying that like I just don't see anything as good and bad anymore. I very much do. I am unlearning so many systems of programming throughout the years that it's like I am beginning to realize that this is what's underneath. I haven't gotten there yet, but I've been able to see what's underneath. Now, the comprehension and the understanding is a lifelong process, but I have been able to see that, like, oh, at the end of this, essentially duality is dissolved. There is no good and bad. There is no negative and positive. It's all in perception. It's all in how you view it. We manifest these things. We create these things. You start to have a comprehensive knowledge of it, but it doesn't mean the emotions and the way you grew up and things that you have believed your whole life just dissolve. No, that is the stuff that gets chipped away at, and that is where a lot of the discomfort and the ugly crying and the isolation comes from, is when you're unlearning these things, when you're coming into an awareness of like, oh, I was looking at something this way for a very long time, and it was super important to me. And now I see all this, these new aspects about it. And now I'm realizing, well, I had it all wrong. And it really wasn't what I thought it was. I was making it out to be something entirely different. When I tell you it's a mind fuck, it's a mind fuck. It is. Specifically, what I wanted to talk about is, like, I have been fashioning my life around the 4 agreements. This book has been like a Bible. Like, it's highlighted and pages have been dog-eared, and I've wrote on the side. I mean, I'm reading it again. I don't even remember the last time I read it, but I'm reading it again, taking notes on it. I'm meditating on it. It's worth it to work on yourself. It's worth it to develop some sort of mindfulness spiritual practice, because the peace of mind, and like it almost feels like being inducted into a club that not many people know about. And I say that because for me specifically, and I'm not going to speak for everybody because this isn't everybody's experience, but for me specifically, as I stated, like in the in other videos and on my channel, I experience, I wouldn't even know what you call it. Clairvoyance is essentially what it is. Clairaudience. So that's the hearing and the seeing. I'm not sure what it's called when you can actually feel things that aren't in this dimension, or when you can smell things. I think that's clairgustance. I don't know. It's a lot of different clairs, but I experience this often. It has grown over the years to a frequent, far more frequent than it ever started. When it first started out, I just had the desire. I was like, I know there's something more beyond this. I'm looking around. I can smell the air. I can touch this surface. I can see this thing. I feel like there's more than this. There's more than this. There has to be more than this. It was sad to me, at least, to think that there wasn't more than this. To think that, oh, I am just stuck in the ghetto of Earth. I got to pay taxes. I got to go to work. This is ghetto. I hate it here. Take me home. Very much my outlook, and I'm working on that outlook shifting. It's not the same as what it was, but that was very much my outlook. Like, forget about it. Like, this place sucks. And that's part of the reason I was in active addiction, trying to escape from just this feeling of like there's more, but I don't know what it is, and I feel crazy thinking that there is something more. And so, to cope with that, this deep, because, like, if anybody out there has ever had that deep, it's a soul knowing. It's this, I don't know how else to describe it, but you would bet money, it's something you think about every day, like when you wake up, when you go to bed, when you're by yourself, specifically when you're by yourself, like, it's these like deep desires and urges for places and like aspects and things that, like, you don't necessarily have proof are actually real. So that can make you feel crazy. It can make you feel like you're just, I'm living in my imagination and I'm not really being realistic. And when you get other people's opinions involved in it, forget about it. People will be, oh, you're crazy, or you're this and you're that, or you're not taking life seriously, and You have to be realistic and practical and all these boring things. And I'm not saying that none of those things are important. They're just very monotonous after a while and not as fulfilling as what I have discovered. And so I just had that desire for a while with nothing tangible to back it up. I just had the desire for a very long time. And it was kind of driving me insane after a certain point because I was like, just give up. Why can't I just give up the hope that there is something more? Why can't I just release from it? Because most of my life I was very much detached from it. But I got to a point where I was just like, this is just too much. And it was right around that time that the things I experienced begin to first occur. And if it hadn't happened, I mean, I can't even count how many times it's happened at this point. But just once or twice, you might think you're crazy. And I did. Little isolated incidents. It was very much like, did that even happen? Can I explain that to somebody? What? Okay, like I can't tell my doctor this. Can I tell my therapist this? Hey, your friends might look at you funny. Your partners might look at you funny. People will just look at you funny. And for many different reasons, but usually people, what I've found, and it's interesting because a lot of people claim to have faith in something more, like a lot of people, oh yeah, I go to church, this and that, or whatever. But like when you tell them something that you've experienced that is very spiritual, they tend to not believe you, or they tend to think you're crazy, or they tend to think you're seeking attention, or whatever motive and assumption they're projecting onto you because they don't want to believe it or they're threatened by it. Who knows? It's endless the reasons why people either don't believe or they're threatened by it, like they get defensive about it. And I've had to become comfortable with all those reasons. When it initially started happening, I was very much excited to tell other people and, ooh, let me share this and let me share this, and thinking that it was going to be received with the same excitement and curiosity as I felt towards it. I realized very quickly that was not the case. And some people would just listen but have that eyebrow like, this bitch. Some people would just immediately challenge it and be like, "Oh, you're overworked, or you're stressed, or it's your medication, or it's the drugs, or something." It's very easy to fall into other people's opinions of things. But I knew in my heart that it had happened. Regardless if anybody believed it or not, I knew it had. And there's many people out there who have had similar situations like this occur. Please don't let other people convince you or influence you to convince you that it didn't happen. Um, so, like I said, it started out as isolated occurrences for me. And when I tell you my entire reality dissolved, it happened quick. Because once it started happening, I'm like, okay, well, this challenges everything that I grew up being told to believe. These things weren't preached to me. And I'm not saying like, it's has nothing to, or like, I was going to say like, this wasn't talked about in the Bible. I really don't know if it was or not. I just know the way the Bible was taught to me through my church community and, the older people in my community who, would preach and share things like that. All those people, none of them spoke about the things that I was experiencing. So I thought that, the fact that I'm experiencing it, what does this now mean? And, I had been told for a good portion of my life that, due to my sexuality or this, that, and the next, like I was going to hell, so I very much for a while had this very close-minded, angry, like just, it was a mix between anger, denial, and sadness because I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me that a loving God and a creator and this and that would punish me simply for who I loved. Um, and it didn't make sense to me. It didn't. So what I have realized, and hold on one second. Hold on one. Sorry. I'm in the process of possibly getting another dog at the end of this month, and I've just been talking to the lady who has the litter of puppies right now, and he's gonna come at the end of the month. Yeah, go lay down, baby. Go on. I think she knows my other dog. Um, This is totally a sidetrack thought, by the way. But I wanted to reply to that text because she's like, "Do you still want him at the end of the month?" And I didn't want to delay that text because yes, I still want him. I need time to get prepared and all of that. But I very much want him. Oh my god, I'm so excited, guys! My fur babies are my family, and I have wanted this type of dog for the longest time. And when I tell you, I'm excited. Anyway, there will be a reveal once I get him. But that's all I'll say for now. God, I'm excited. Anyway, so yeah, as I was saying, this journey. Um, I was getting to explaining why I am on this journey and why all of this is worth it. I'm sure people have got to wonder. I've been wondering, what is the purpose of trying to be a good person? Essentially, for me, that means trying to have my words and my actions align. Trying to be self-disciplined, but not too rigid. Trying to take all the bad habits that I've had my whole life and won't learn about why I have those habits, the causes and everything that, you know, is what's the word I'm looking for? Everything that manifests those habits because everything comes from an underlying feeling, an underlying cause, an underlying experience, memory, programming, whatever. It doesn't just happen. It starts with something else. And so trying to figure all that out. And well, do I like this? Okay. Can I, mediate it a little bit? Like, okay, I like this, but I do it a little bit too much, or I don't like it when I do it here and there. So I'm gonna work on that. Or I don't like this at all. Okay, let me work on removing this from my repertoire of myself and completely first of all learn about why I did it to begin with, because so much healing and perspective comes from that. But just it's very much a process of sifting through what you like about yourself and what you don't like, and doing inventory, keeping what you want and letting go of what you don't want is essentially what it is. And I have been doing that for a while, and it's been extremely rewarding because when I tell you, like I said, I used to be strung out, um strung out. Like, you've seen Intervention with the heroin addicts. I'm sure I was one of them, just nodding off, stealing things, lying to people, pawning things, just a hot mess. Not proud of that at all. And the work I have done on myself has gotten me through that. It has helped me understand why I, had those tendencies. And I'm not saying I have it all figured out, because I don't. Whew, I caution anyone to say you have it all figured out, because I promise you, life is going to be looking at you like, okay, we'll see if you got it all figured out. That shit comes in quick. So I ain't saying I got it all figured out. I have just figured out a lot of what is behind a lot of things. And so, yeah, I, homeless, self-esteem, non-existent. Again, I'm still realizing all the ways in which I have put myself last and just been awful to me, and figuring out why that is. Like, where did I even get this silent tendency? We say silent. I say silent because a lot of us don't like ourselves, and it's not that obvious until you start doing the work. And it's okay. I think, if you're going to start on the spiritual journey, if you have a couple of tools, you're going to be okay. It's still going to be rough at times, but you're going to be okay. And one of those tools, or those, what you need to have in your handy bag, throw shame and guilt out the window for anybody else and towards yourself. Throw it out the window. Like, that has to be non-existent. Oh my God, he's so cute. Sorry, she sent me a picture. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. Shame and guilt has to go out the window. Okay, forget about it. Shame and guilt gone. And it's not just going to disappear like that anyway. I'm just saying, get it in your mind that you need to release shame and guilt towards yourself and other people. Just get used to that mindset. It's not going to just disappear overnight, but just get used to that mindset. Because some of the reasons behind why some of the stuff I did, and I have just realized that, I'm not saying that I had no love for myself at all. I did in certain areas. Sorry, hold on a second. I am so distracted right now. Sorry. Anyway, y'all, the way I'm giddy over getting this dog. Anyway, so here comes she knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, um yeah, being on this journey, it's I could say there was things I liked about myself, like I like the things I'm interested in. I'm proud of that. I'm not ashamed of that at all. Like the music I think is good taste in music. The clothes I like, the food I like, the culture I like, the art I like. I'm proud of all those things. I enjoy all those things. I have no shame or guilt attached to any of those. But the people pleasing and the lack of setting boundaries and the being scared to speak up because I want to spare other people's feelings, but fuck my own, didn't like that. it's a hard pill to swallow, guys. Be prepared, but do it with grace and compassion towards yourself, because if you struggle, and I feel like we all do to a certain extent, but if you struggle and this is one of your major lessons, like just judging other people, this is going to be rough on you, because the shit you start to figure out about yourself, you have to face it objectively. Otherwise, forget about it. You will end up a drug addict, or you will end up in depression, or you will end up God knows where doing what to yourself because of the shame and the guilt. Like society creates these parameters of guilt and shame. Source, the divine, the creator, the essence, however you want to identify with it, God, however you want to say it. I just know it as a feeling and as a expression. I can't say if I haven't put a face to it. I've heard the voice. Um, but I'm sidetracking. But however you want to put it up there, that essence, that divine being, does not shame us, does not judge us. There's no guilt. None of that. But first of all, if you don't want to believe that, fine. Forget about what I'm saying. But I dare you to try to wrap your mind around that. Think about this society, and like you can't hardly spit out your own window without someone turning their nose up at you. You can't do anything. I mean, even if you think it's good or whatever, there will always be somebody who will have a problem with something you're doing. I heard a quote a long time ago, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's like something about like, we are all on somebody's list of things that is not light. Like somebody out there doesn't like people who like bagels. If you like bagels, forget about it. You know what I mean? And that's an exaggeration and a little bit of like, sarcasm, but essentially it is that simple. You can say, have a nice day to somebody. Like, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is impossible to please everybody. And nobody is perfect, because who determines what is perfect? Nothing is, first of all. Nothing is perfect. But the reason why it's essential to release that shame and that guilt is because if you, first of all, like, if you are a person of faith and you believe in God, or you believe whatever you believe in, I essentially know that religions, the way they are, in the text, the stories, it's all paths to the same source. It's all telling stories to get us to essentially love one another and, enjoy this life and be fulfilled. And all the little things along the way are like little secrets and gems. And not everybody discovers everything that you can discover along the way. There's a lot of things that, a lot of people are missing out on because they're not doing the work, because they're scared to face this, that, and the next. And I'm not saying like, like that's uncommon, or that you should feel bad about yourself if you are one of those people. I am not thrilled about facing half of the shit that I have, half of the shit that I know I am in the process of learning. I'm not like, yay. Now, ultimately, I know the goal is to embrace everything that happens, regardless of if it feels good or bad, but to embrace it and release my attachment to it. Observe, don't absorb, to become, just practice detachment, like just experiencing something and learning from it rather than having an emotional attachment to what's going on, because the emotions and the thought processes are what hold us in these moods and these depressions and anxiety, and we bring it upon ourselves, not even knowing that we're bringing it upon ourselves, because we think, oh, we have emotions and thoughts. That's not out of the ordinary. But it's those emotions and those thoughts that are chaining us to these feelings and these beliefs about in ourselves and other people and things. All of that's running the show until you realize that it's running the show and try to take control back yourself. And that's essentially what I've been trying to do. And like I said, this is not, there's no final point to this. I used to think that there's like, surely you reach a point where that's just it. I am 99.9% sure that that's not the case anymore. I leave that one little bit left just because, what do I know? As I've gone down this path, I realize that the second I feel like, oh, I know that this is the way something is, life has pulled the rug out from under me, and I figured out all this other shit that was underneath that rug that I didn't know about, that was hiding. So, yeah. But we, like I said, we don't realize that we are, and I'm talking to myself as I'm saying this, we don't realize that we're emotionally condemning ourselves to these emotions: depression, anxiety, um like I hate my job, or this is so stressful. We've said it so much, we've convinced ourselves, we've perceived something in a way for so long, and we've just accepted the conclusion that we have about it, just like, this is just how it is. It's just how it is. And that's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. And like I said, I'm very much like an observer of these things, but still experiencing them. So it's not like I can say like, oh, like I don't know why we do this. Like I still do much of this. It's just having that comprehension of what is happening. And that's not necessarily like, I used to think like, well, at least I know. Listen, when they say ignorance is bliss, I get that. I'm not saying ignorance is best, but it is there is a fair amount of bliss that accompanies not knowing that you're fucking some shit up. I'll just put it that way. When you're unaware that you created this fire, sure, you can look at the fire and be like, who started this fire? That fire is huge. What kind of idiot would set fire to this? The whole time it's been you. I'm just saying that like there's too much out there for any of us to be judgmental. Nobody's perfect. I promise you, like, because I've been someone who's observed the outer world far more than myself, which I'm not saying is a good thing, but I was doing this for a very long time where I was like not even focused on myself. I thought I was, but I was so consumed in what everyone else was doing. And part of that is a gift, I believe, I realized over the years that this isn't happening with everyone, where you can literally see or hear or pick up on the subconscious tendencies of other people, the things that they're not necessarily sharing with you, the things that they feel in a moment when they're saying something else. That is hard. I will be the first one to tell you it's cool when it's not on full blast. It's cool when it's, everything's good with somebody, but you start to have some conflict with somebody and like you start to see the underlying things behind that. Now that's, you may not think like what's underlying is, well, what does the person say? Are they really, they're not really acting and saying those things. No, but the reason they're acting and saying those things is caused by something. And that's what I have oftentimes been able to see or hear or feel. Um, sorry, I'm so excited about this talk. Those are often the things that I have been able to pick up on, and it has been, I call it a blessing and a curse. I'm learning to think of it as just a blessing. Um, it's cool in a lot of instances. It saves me a lot of wondering and grief and analyzation when it's that obvious. Like, oh, why does that person act that way towards me? Well, when you can see that, or when you can feel it, or when you can hear it, it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to respond to them, in a negative way or get offended because I see why. And those reasons why might be similar to a lot of reasons why I do certain things or have done certain things. So I'm seeing that like it's far too common that we are all operating from a lot of the same subconscious shit. And so trying to skip the finger pointing and the blame and the getting my feelings hurt altogether, because why I can just choose to not associate with that person if I don't want to, but I don't have to entertain that person, or I don't have to um, allow my feelings to be affected by what they're doing. I can just remove myself from that situation. I feel like we would all do so much better if we would just remove ourselves from situations instead of staying in them and complaining about it. Specifically, people, like I I have a lot of understanding, and I'm working and learning on having compassion in, areas that I need it. But I have a lot of general understanding of the reasons why other people do things, why I do certain things. It doesn't mean that I just immediately don't feel some type of way about it. I just understand why. And that understanding saves me a lot of times. It comes in and it's like, okay, all right. Now my human emotional reaction is still underneath the surface happening, but I can observe that emotion, and with the logic and the understanding that I have, that emotion doesn't make it much further than there, because I understand it, and I understand that my reaction to it is based off of my own growth. Like somebody calling me a dumb whatever 10 years ago might have really pissed me off. Well, like, how dare you, whatever. People are triggered by the words that people say all day. Look at children for this example. Like, he called me a poopy face, like, okay, you know what I mean? But like, in essence, it's just words. And it goes back to these 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally. We don't have to accept the emotional garbage from other people. Someone calls you a name, you have the power to just blink it away. You don't have to react. Now, I'm not saying you're not going to feel some type of way, because I feel like that's human. It would be great to get to the point where the emotion doesn't even come, and that's I'm sure that's attainable. But as like I said, I'm very much in the beginning stages of a lot of this, and so I have the emotions. It just doesn't make it to the surface because of the work that I've done so far. Back in the day, it would have very much made it to the surface, spilled out over, stained some shit, knocked some shit over. Like it was bad. But now, much of it, and I say much because not all of it, um, much of it stays inside, and it doesn't like emotionally tear me up. It's not like I'm repressing it necessarily, but it's like there's no point in reacting and expressing it, because I if I get offended by something that somebody says to me, the only reason I would get offended is if I am scared of that, or I believe it's true. Now, and honestly, if you have an understanding of why people throw insults, well, that's coming from them. That's separate from me entirely. Someone's reason to call me a dumbass is their reason. Now, unless I feel like I am a dumbass, I don't need to get upset about that. I can choose not to associate with that person, walk away from that person, whatever. And honestly, now it is very much like that. I actually have a lot of, it's just like I feel sad for that person. It's not necessarily pity, but it's just like a damn, like I'm realizing that and this is one of the gems in life. When you're doing the work, you start to have certain understandings about things and why things happen, and it saves you a lot of feeling some type of way about stuff. When you realize where things are coming from, when people project things onto you and say things about you and say things to you in a way that they're trying to harm you or hurt your feelings, when you understand that that's purely their issue, and that comes from their programming and their perception and just their perception, and me getting upset by it must mean that I accept what they think If you think about it that way, it'll shut you up real quick. You'll think, why did I ever? Because I like to say it in this way, like you give someone that power. Like if you're a competitive person like me, putting it that way was a game changer for me. When I react to something that someone is doing, I am giving my power away to them to say that what you're saying is true enough to me that it is making me angry. What you're saying is true enough to me that I am going to react in the way that you think I'm going to react. None of that is true unless we accept it. The second we react back to it and start yelling back to it and calling names back, that means that we've accepted that what this person is saying, we think it about ourselves. It's true to some extent. And okay. And that would make anybody angry. But you don't have to be angry about that, especially if you don't think it's true about yourself. You're really wasting time getting angry about shit if you don't believe it's true about yourself. And I say that knowing that, like, and I'm not saying like having the emotion is a negative thing. Negative, the emotion is a completely natural thing. We're all going to have emotions. It's just what we're doing with those emotions. Like I said, now I might have the understanding at this point in my life, but learning what to do with those emotions since I have the understanding has been a whole new area of growth for me. You have to find a place for that, because in the past you can yell back at somebody, you can break something, I could go out and get high, I could go out and do anything self-destructive because of what someone said to me and how I accepted that from them and let it anger me. Now I can see that what the person is saying is clearly coming from, everything that they've observed and learned throughout life, their perception and their perception alone. How do I feel about me? Now, the question I had is, well, can't I still get mad that someone would even try to say something that would hurt me? Never mind if I believe that the words are true or not, but still getting mad that, like, this motherfucker really tried to ruin my day. Even if they didn't, like, how dare they try to? Listen, that's where I'm about at with it, because it's still like, damn it, why would you be that type of person to try to ruin my or try to hurt me in that way? Like, but when you think about why people say hurtful things, like the whole thing, hurt people, that's true. If someone is dealing with a certain type of trauma or whatever, they haven't done the work or anything. When you start to understand that, it's like, okay, I am not accepting their behavior indefinitely because of it. Now, you're still an adult, and I still believe that you need to be aware of the things that you're saying and doing and all of that, because words are spells. We cast spells with our words. This is, black magic can be talking bad about somebody that you don't like. It's as simple as that. We think black magic is some woman with a long nose with a wart over a cauldron, like chanting Latin. That's not necessarily what black magic is. Black magic can be like, oh, that girl, like, she just thinks she's better than everybody else. Or she the way she dresses is this, that, and the next, or the way she does her hair is this, that, and the next. I don't like the way she did that. Can be black magic. I don't like what she's doing, blah, 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 blah. Talking ill of someone, because why? First of all, when people say that, like, even your haters will talk shit about you, like, all press is good press in a sense. Like, why are we letting something bother? If we don't like somebody, why are we wasting our breath? The breath that we have to use on this planet, why are we wasting our breath? Why are we wasting our time? Which everybody says, oh, my time is precious. Why are we wasting our breath, our time, our energy to talk about somebody that we claim not to like? Wouldn't you just ignore them and act like they don't exist? Wouldn't that make more sense? Instead of just, oh, I'm going to put all this life into it and talk about this person. It very much gives fangirl. Like, it very much gives like, oh, you really actually love me because you're talking about me so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a weird example, but like, words are spells. And so, like I said, with this book, if you don't know what the 4 agreements are, it's be impeccable. And this is in no certain order, but be impeccable with your word, meaning watch what you say. Words are spells. I don't care if you believe it or not. It's still true. I guess that's the point I've reached with so many things. Like, you don't have to believe it. It doesn't make it any less true. You'll figure it out. You've already seen it in certain areas. Maybe you're just not choosing to admit to it, but words are spells. We start to feel certain ways about people, places, and things because of how we talk about it. You do a lot of complaining, well, you end up feeling some type of way about something. You complain about your job enough, soon enough, you hate that fucking job. You complain about this person or this teacher or whatever enough, soon enough, you have this bias and this prejudgment towards that person. Words are spells. They create emotions, they create ideas. And most of all, if you feel some type of way about somebody and it's not loving and, positive, keep it to yourself. Why are you going to then gather folks with you? Let's all talk about this. Like, let's all gather in a hurdle and do, cast spells. Like, no. I feel like if people could visually see the energetic things that are happening when they speak, when they think, man, this world would go silent in so many ways. In a lot of ways, it would get louder, but in a lot of ways, it would get quiet. People would be silenced, a lot of them. I cannot stress the importance of this enough. And now, like I was saying, I'm not saying that I am perfect by this by any means at all. Because community, like when you want to be a part of a group of people, which I enjoy being in a group of people that, I fit into, and I like them and they like me, and we can joke and laugh. It's a good feeling. It's community. It's camaraderie. It's not bad. But a lot of times, especially like growing up when you're in high school, you gossip. People bond together over the shit they don't like. And a lot of times they'll talk about that shit that they don't like, which includes other people. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I feel like a lot of people would be silenced. Words are important. I promise you. I have seen. I don't. I am. I choose my words very carefully. My Mercury is in Cancer. Mercury is the planet of communication, by the way. Mercury is in Cancer. I am very careful with the words that I say. I have not always been this way, mind you. This has just been within specifically the last year of my life. I can say that I have been super mindful of what I am saying. I'm not saying I'm doing this flawlessly at all, but I'm just mindful of it all the time now. It's like I can't not think about it. Be impeccable with your word. Watch what you're saying about yourself. Watch what you're saying about other people. Energy comes back around. One of the main reasons why, it's like if someone asks me, like, what is the purpose of you, trying to better yourself and to grow and to, you know, knock out these bad habits? Karma. I don't know if karma is the right word. Karma is, the human language is, we came up with words for certain things, but there's a lot of times not words for things that we still need to express. And I feel like karma is one of them, but it's essentially just an energetic exchange. What you put out will come back to you. And a lot of people think, well, like, what about these like rich assholes and whatever else? Like, they're living good and they're not, they're greedy, and these corporations, leader of these corporations, for example, or whatever. First of all, we see what is on the outside. We see, oh, you have a yacht or a nice car, or a nice house, you have this supermodel wife or whatever. Oh, well, they're a horrible person, but they're living the life. Are they? They might have the material things that we wish we would have. Therefore, that would be a good life to us. But how is their mental? How are they sleeping at night? If they're honest with themselves. And you can't really necessarily go by what people will tell you, because a lot of people are going to be scared or ashamed to even be real in this sense. But are they sleeping well at night? How is their thought processes? How are their relationships and communications with other people? That shit could be suffering. It probably is to some degree. I can promise you that nothing, if you are just being a shit person, careless with your words, don't care how your actions or words affect other people, um, doing anything in excess, greed, you know what I'm saying? Just going to the extreme. We can think about the obvious things, harming people, but I mean just to the extreme. If you're a very greedy person, if you're a very envious person, if you're a very judgmental person, all of that will find its way back to you in some way. You may not be able to identify what that way is. To outside people, it might be like, well, it doesn't look like they ever get their karma. I promise you, if it's not already happening in a way that you just can't see, then that's none of your business anyway. Leave it up to source, honestly. A lot of times, and I'll be the first one to say it, I have wanted to hand deliver people's karma. I have wanted to knock on their door and be like, here is your shit sandwich, I made it for you. And the gratification, but that's my ego. Go lay down, yeah, go on. That's my ego. I can't say. I can't really say that like my ego very much would love to see a lot of people trip and stub their toe. I don't want to see anybody really get fucked up. I don't want to see anybody really suffer. I don't want to see anybody homeless or on the streets or any of that. But there's been quite a few people that I'm like, I wish you would just trip and just look stupid in a moment. I just wish you would fall right there. Your legs would give out. You'd be fine. You'd get back up. But I want you to fall. I want you to trip. I want to just flick you in the center. Just like minor inconveniences. You know what I'm saying? That's the ego, but it's like I really have to trust and believe that it will be handled because it is. And it might not be in my timeline. I want this to happen. Well, it's been months. It's been a year or so, and nothing has happened. Well, first of all, I don't even really know that. Second of all, that's my timeline. It's not the timeline of the universe. It's what if it's accumulating over a course of a very long time, and then it's about to hit that person in the form of a disease or a near-death accident or something else. It's just accumulating. We don't know how things are going to come back, but I promise you it does. What the issue is, we have an expectation and an idea and a desire for how we want it to come back, what that's going to look like for us and for other people. And when it doesn't meet that expectation or that image, we think they didn't get it. We think we didn't get it. Oh, well, I've been doing all this and I'm talking to myself right now. This is what happens a lot of times when I'm talking. I feel like my ancestors and my higher self channel through me sometimes. They're like, here, bitch, take this knowledge while you're talking about it. It may not look like what I want it to look like. Like I've tried to put all this good out into the world. I try to be selfless and not to a detriment, but I try to be selfless. I try to love others. And I'm not doing any of this for a reward. I'm doing it because, well, I feel like I want to. First of all, I want to. It feels good to be kind. It feels good to do something nice for somebody. I am extremely empathic. So it's like I share in that joy. It's kind of a selfish thing. Like it makes me feel good. So why wouldn't I want to make other people feel good? But beyond that, I genuinely just want to spread joy and love. Like I'm not saying I'm always going to be able to do this, but that is always what I would want to do. Who's going to choose to be a dickhead? If you had a choice between being a good person and being an asshole, who's choosing the asshole and why? For what reason? You know what I mean? Like I want to be a good person. I want to live a good life just because it feels good. My life has gone so much better. And I'm not saying I've never faced hardship because I have. And like I said, there's not always reasons in the moment why things happen. And it's not always tied to something that we did. Life just happens sometimes. This is something I have had to learn and I'm still learning and accepting that like it's not always tied to a direct action of mine. You know what I mean? Sometimes, and it's also in my perception. A car wreck to somebody can seem tragic, whereas to somebody else, it can seem like a blessing that it happened because of something else. You know what I mean? Like I use that example in another podcast about like, say someone loses mobility in their legs. That's tragic to most people. But what if that person, it happens and they choose to view it in the sense of like, well, now I get to slow down. Now I get a chance to have, other people help me and to learn how to ask for help and how to accept that help. And they choose to view it that way. Is it a tragedy anymore? Well, not to them. It might be to other people, but fuck that. That's other people's perception. What matters is how they view it. They're the ones without the mobility, so they could be fine and good for them. Why would we want anyone to have a negative impression about anything if they're choosing and can really, if they can really adopt a positive outlook? And I'm not saying like doing something careless and that's harming others and then just choosing to view it in a good light. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that like something that most people would perceive as negative happens to someone, but that person decides to find the silver lining in it. Let them do it. Life is already a challenge enough on its own. Perception is everything. Everything is perception. How we view it is the power, and we have that power to yield ourselves. We're magicians. We're all of us out here, all of us. A lot of us don't wake up to this fact. A lot of us, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people won't know. A lot of people are doing it and they don't know. But we have that power. I'm not saying it's easy and that you're going to be able to do it immediately and flawlessly in every area. No, none of that. but you can start working towards it and you will see results. So yeah, as I was saying, and I'm just going to wrap it up real quick. Be impeccable with your word. Words are spells. Don't make assumptions. This is another thing. Like I said, I'm trying to live my life. Sorry, y'all. You ever like get like an itch in your throat and it's like, how do I get that itch? It's like in my throat. Anyway, don't make assumptions. Um, Sometimes if you assume something, you will be right. But a lot of times you assume something, it's not right. But a lot of times people will go off of those things that they have experienced that have been right so much that they forget that not everything is the way you think it is. That's extremely selfish to think that it is. Now, you might be right a good majority of the time. Hell, if you're psychic, then, shit. But don't assume anything. If you don't know for sure, but you just heard it from somebody, you really want to make that assumption? You know what I mean? Like, how foolish do we look believing the spells that other people speak without knowing the truth of it a lot of times? Oh, so and so did this or said this. Did they? Are we going to be brave enough to go to that person and ask them themselves? And if not, then why do we cling to the ideas and the things that a lot of people say just because? Like, why are we just choosing to believe this? Maybe it confirms a belief that we had about that person. Oh, well, this person said it and I already felt this way about that person, so it must be true. Like I said, sometimes yeah, it'll stick. It'll pan out. Like, oh, this person, I thought they stole this, and they did. You know what I mean? Like, you're not always going to be wrong, but you're not always right either. Both exist. It is and it isn't all the time. So don't make assumptions. Don't. Save yourself some grief. Be courageous and brave enough to ask questions and work on our communication so that the assumptions diminish. We save ourselves a lot of pain when we stop assuming things. And if you don't want to stop assuming things, then you are literally creating 50% of your own bullshit by choosing to believe shit without verifying it, without research. You know what I'm saying? Cite your sources, essentially. Cite your sources. So be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. Like, that's what I was speaking of before. If someone calls you stupid, why react? I'm not saying you're not going to feel some type of way, because it's like that's what's been programmed in us our entire lives throughout society. It's beat into us. So we see it in everything. The emotion is not going to diminish. However, are you going to react? Are you going to just fly off the handle? Oh, that person called me stupid. Now I'm going to talk about it and now I'm going to react. You don't have to do all that. Don't take it personally. Understand that we are all, read this book, read the book. We're all living in our own dreams. We're all projecting our own perceptions. No one perception is like the other perceptions. They're all separate. Don't take anything personally. Someone thinks something about you, let them think it. And if it bothers you that much that they think that, then communicate with them. See where it goes. Maybe you can change their what they say. Maybe you can take over your own narrative. But a lot of times, and what I'm realizing and having to become comfortable with, is that people are going to assume, they're going to think whatever they want, they're going to join in what the group is saying, because it's so basic and common. That's just, yeah, where it's all just talk about something that we really don't know, but we feel some type of way, and we're going to believe that over analyzing, could it be something else? It's extremely selfish of us to think that the way we're perceiving something is the only way that it could be. Even if you've seen it in that way your entire life. Well, every time someone frowns, they're sad. Well, we know that's not the case. People frown when they're disgusted. People frown when they're confused. People frown for all types of reasons, not just because they're sad, but if throughout your whole life you have witnessed people who have frowned when they're sad, you might have that belief and never question it. But just be aware that there are other things that exist besides your perception. There are other truths out there besides your own. And so have the open mind to explore that, or to at least think about it, rather than just, oh, well, this person is this way because I think it looks this way. It's super basic. This is what I say when people think they're so different and, like, I'm authentic and I think for myself. You're really just thinking on your programming. You've been programmed to think this way your whole life based off your experiences, and that's fine. It's happened with all of us to a certain extent. Sorry, guys. Like I said, I'm like super itchy right now. It's happened with all of us to a certain extent. That's programming happens. We all grew up in separate lives and we all experience different things. Programming is inevitable, but it's the unlearning and the being aware that what is inside our universe is not all that exists. And we owe it to ourselves and to other people to open our minds to this concept, to not be closed-minded. If you think you're open-minded, but you're just assuming the first thing you see or hear, you're not really open-minded. And be honest with yourself. So be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. And my favorite, always try your best. This is a continuous lesson for me because our best is not always going to look the same in any given moment. My best when I'm healthy and fit and have eaten a meal and drank my water is going to be much different than if I'm sick, dehydrated, and tired. My best over here is still my best over here, but they're going to look differently based off of many different things that are happening. This is something I am learning because my best to me looks one way or has looked one way. Even if, if I'm physically sick is when for weird reason, like when I've been physically sick, it's like I've given myself, a pass to like, you don't have to bust ass. And even then it's hard for me to sit down when I'm not feeling well, unless I'm just like, I've got a fever and I'm just really sick. But yeah, but for some reason, like if I'm sad or I've had a rough day, I've been stressed or something like that, to me in the past, and what I'm working on is realizing that my best is going to look different in those occasions. And that's okay. My emotions changing and fluctuating is going to influence my best. And that is just as okay as if I'm physically sick or if I have a broken arm, my best looking different also. It's okay. But always try my best. If I've got a broken arm and all I can do is just this, then I'm going to try to do this. But if I have a broken arm and I'm just like, is that my best to me? It's still very subjective, but I'm just saying always try your best and only you know what that is. Only you know what that is, but be real and honest with yourself about what that is. Understand what your best looks like. Because if you're like me, like I said, my best I thought was like balls to the wall. And so whenever I wasn't going balls to the wall, I had a lot of self-criticism and like all of that shit, not realizing that like, hey, you're working on this on the side and that's really emotionally draining, or you're grieving right now. So yeah, your best is going to look different. Give yourself some slack. It's worth being conscious of and aware of and working on. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up with that today, guys. I appreciate you guys watching. If you've watched my other 2 videos, thank you. If you haven't, check them out. I know they're kind of long. I tried to make this one a little bit shorter. Yeah, peace, love, namaste, and all that good shit. Stay safe out there in those cosmic streets. Love yourself, love others, show compassion and grace to yourself and to others. And yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it.